By the third day, I was unraveling. I'd stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself in the mirror, that uncanny reflection that was me and not me, familiar and alien. My hands shook constantly. I snapped at Amara when she tried to offer me more makeup. I skipped meals because the dining hall felt too exposed, too public. And then, on Thursday evening, as I was leaving the library with an armful of books on Gothic manuscript illumination, I heard a voice behind me. "You're doing it wrong." I spun around. Sienna stood in the shadows of the corridor, leaning against a stone column with her arms crossed. She was still wearing the uniform, but on her it looked almost subversive, the skirt hemmed a fraction shorter than regulation, the cardigan sleeves pushed up to her elbows. "What are you talking about?" I snapped, my voice harsher than I intended. "The uniform," she said, pushing off the column and walking toward me. "You're wearing it like a prisoner wears a jumpsuit. Like it's something happening to you instead of something you're choosing." "I'm not choosing this," I hissed, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "You chose it for me. Without my consent." "Fair," she admitted, stopping a few feet away. "But here's the thing, Elliot, you're here now. You got past orientation. You're in classes. You have a room, a spot in the program, everything you wanted. The only thing standing between you and success is you. That's easy for you to say." "You're not," I gestured helplessly at myself. "Not what? Not struggling?" Her eyes flashed. "You think this is easy for me? You think I don't know what I did? Then why did you do it?" The question ripped out of me, raw and desperate. "Why, Sienna? If you knew it would be this hard, why would you?" "Because I saw something in you that you couldn't see in yourself." Her voice cracked, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine emotion break through her usual armor. "Do you remember that night in the library? Last semester, during finals?" I blinked, confused. "What night?" "You were working on your thesis. It was like 2 in the morning, and I found you passed out over a stack of books. When I woke you up, you started crying." She took a step closer. "You told me you were terrified of graduating, of going out into the world, of being seen. You said you'd spent your whole life trying to be invisible because you didn't know how to be anything else." The memory surfaced slowly, hazy and half-forgotten. I'd been so exhausted, so overwhelmed, that I'd spilled things I normally kept locked away. "I was drunk," I whispered. "You were honest," she corrected. And I realized something that night. You weren't just afraid of failure, Elliot. You were afraid of yourself. Of what it would mean to actually take up space in the world. "So you decided to force me into a skirt?" I shot back, anger flaring. "I decided to give you a reason to stop hiding." Her voice softened. "Look, I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm not even saying it's right. But I am saying that you have an opportunity here, not just to study manuscripts, but to figure out who you actually are when nobody's looking over your shoulder telling you who you're supposed to be." I opened my mouth to argue, but she held up a hand. "Just try," she said. "Stop fighting the uniform and start wearing it like it belongs to you. Walk like you have every right to be here. Talk like your voice matters. Because it does, Elliot. Whether you're wearing a skirt or trousers, your mind is brilliant. Don't let the clothes erase that." She turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the corridor with her words echoing in my head. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my room for a long time. The uniform hung on a hanger behind me, pressed and ready for tomorrow. My reflection stared back, barefaced, exhausted, caught between identities. "Stop fighting it," Sienna had said. But how? How could I stop fighting something that felt like a violation of who I was? I thought about my grandmother, about the way she'd traced her fingers over that illuminated manuscript all those years ago. She'd told me that the monks who created those texts didn't just copy words, they transformed them. They took ordinary ink and parchment and turned them into something sacred, something that would outlast kingdoms and wars and centuries. Transformation is the heart of preservation, she'd said. To save something, you must first understand what it could become. I picked up the blouse from the hanger, holding it in my hands. What if Sienna was right? What if this wasn't about becoming someone else, but about discovering a version of myself I'd been too afraid to acknowledge? The thought terrified me. But it also whispered something dangerous: possibility. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since arriving at Ashford. I looked in the mirror and didn't flinch. I put on the uniform slowly, deliberately. I smoothed the tights up my legs and felt the texture without shame. I buttoned the blouse and noticed how the fabric draped across my shoulders. I fastened the skirt and adjusted it so it sat properly at my waist. I slipped on the loafers and stood up straight, feeling the slight lift of the heel shift my posture. Then I did something else. I used the concealer Amara had given me. Not to hide, but to refine. I softened the shadow on my jaw, blended it carefully, and studied the result. Then I took a comb and brushed my hair back from my face, pinning it neatly behind my ears the way Amara had shown me. When I looked in the mirror this time, I didn't see a man in disguise. I saw someone trying. And maybe that was enough. In class that day, something shifted. When Professor Ashvin asked a question about the structural integrity of vellum in humid conditions, I raised my hand, not tentatively, but with confidence. I answered clearly, precisely, drawing on research I'd done years ago. The professor nodded approvingly. Excellent point, Ms. Cross. This time, I didn't flinch at the name. During the practical session, I worked alongside Charlotte and Fiona, carefully separating the pages of a water-damaged psalter. My hands were steady. My focus is sharp. When Fiona complimented my precision, I smiled and said thank you, and meant it. At lunch, when Amara asked how I was adjusting, I told her the truth: it's hard. But I'm managing. She squeezed my hand. You're doing more than managing. You're thriving. I wasn't sure I believed her. But I wanted to. It was Saturday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks into the term, when everything changed again. I was working alone in the restoration workshop, painstakingly repairing the spine of a 13th century Bible. The light from the tall windows cast golden squares across my workbench, and for the first time since arriving at Ashford, I felt something like peace. Then the door creaked open. I looked up, and froze. Standing in the doorway was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His eyes were sharp, assessing, and they locked onto me with unnerving intensity. Miss Cross? He asked, his voice cultured and precise. I nodded slowly, my heart beginning to race. I'm Dr. Nathaniel Harcourt, he said, stepping into the workshop. Dean of Student Affairs. My stomach dropped. I've been reviewing your file, he continued, moving closer. And I must say, it makes for fascinating reading. He set a manila folder on the workbench beside me. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. You see, he said, his tone conversational but edged with steel, Ashford takes great pride in the accuracy of our records. So imagine my surprise when a routine audit revealed certain discrepancies in your enrollment documents. I couldn't breathe. Your passport, for instance, lists your legal name as Elliot Alexander Cross. Male. Born April 1999. He paused. And yet your application was submitted under Elliot Adriana Cross. Female. The room tilted. Now, I've spoken with our registrar, Dr. Pemberton, and she assures me that all materials were submitted correctly according to the information provided. Which means, he leaned forward slightly. Someone deliberately falsified your application. I forced myself to speak. It was a mistake. A friend was helping me, and she. Mistakes of this magnitude are not easily forgiven at Ashford, he interrupted. In fact, under normal circumstances, this would result in immediate expulsion and potential legal action for fraud. Terror flooded through me. However, he continued, and something in his tone made me look up, I find myself in an unusual position. You see, Ms. Cross, or should I say Mr. Cross, you are not the first student to arrive at Ashford under ambiguous circumstances. I stared at him, uncomprehending. He smiled, a strange, knowing smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ashford Institute has a long history, he said quietly. Longer than most people realize. And throughout that history, there have been special cases. Students who did not fit neatly into the categories society prescribed for them. Students who found themselves caught between identities. He paused. The Institute has always had a particular interest in such individuals. I don't understand, I whispered. You will, he said. In time. But for now, here is what I propose. You will continue your studies here as Elliot Cross, female. You will maintain the appearance you have established. You will excel in your coursework. And in exchange, I will ensure that this matter is overlooked. And if I refuse? His smile vanished. Then you will be expelled within the hour, your scholarship revoked, and your academic record permanently marked with a notation of fraudulent admission. I suspect your future prospects in manuscript restoration would be quite limited. I felt the trap close around me. But here's the interesting part, he continued, his voice softening. I don't think you want to refuse. I've been watching you this past fortnight, Miss Cross. I've seen how you've adapted. How you've begun to inhabit this role with increasing competence. Some might even say, comfort. That's not. Isn't it? He tilted his head. Tell me, when Professor Ashvin calls you Ms. Cross, do you still correct her? When your classmates compliment your work, do you shrink away? Or have you begun to accept that perhaps this identity serves you better than the one you left behind? I couldn't answer. Because he was right. And that truth was more terrifying than anything else. You have until Monday morning to decide, Dr. Harcourt said, picking up the folder. Continue as you are, or leave Ashford forever. The choice, as they say, is yours. He walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Ms. Cross, I hope you stay. Ashford has much to teach you. About manuscripts, yes. But also about yourself. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I sat frozen at my workbench, my hands still holding the damaged Bible, my mind spinning in freefall. Who was Dr. Harcourt? Why was he protecting me? And what did he mean by special cases? But beneath those questions lurked a more dangerous one. What if I didn't want to leave? I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the writing desk in my room, staring at the blank page of my journal, pen frozen in my hand. The rain had returned, drumming against the windows in relentless rhythm, and somewhere in the distance, the old clock tower chimed the hours, 10, 11, midnight, 1. Dr. Harcourt's ultimatum circled through my mind like a predator stalking prey. Continue as you are, or leave Ashford forever. But it wasn't the threat of expulsion that kept me awake. It was the other thing he'd said, the words that had burrowed under my skin and refused to let go. I don't think you want to refuse. I thought about the past 2 weeks. The morning rituals that had shifted from torture to routine. The way I'd stopped flinching when people called me Ms. Cross. The quiet pride I'd felt when Professor Ashvin praised my restoration work. The unexpected comfort of Amara's friendship, of Fiona's easy laughter, of belonging, however precariously, to a community. I thought about how, just yesterday, I'd caught myself adjusting my skirt without thinking. How I'd smiled at my reflection before leaving for class. How I'd begun to move through the world with something that almost resembled confidence. Who was I becoming? The question terrified me because I didn't have an answer. I picked up my phone and stared at Sienna's number for a long time. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I couldn't press it. Because what would I even say? You were right? I'm losing myself? I'm finding myself? I don't know the difference anymore? Instead, I opened my grandmother's last email, sent 2 days before I'd left for England. My dearest Elliot, I am so proud of you. Ashford will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine, but remember this, the most valuable manuscripts are the palimpsests, the ones that have been written over, scraped clean, and rewritten. They contain layers of truth, each one as important as the last. Never be afraid of discovering what lies beneath the surface. With all my love, Nan. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the screen. Palimpsests. Layers of truth, each one as important as the last. Maybe I wasn't losing myself. Maybe I was uncovering something that had always been there, hidden beneath years of conditioning and fear and the desperate need to be invisible. Or maybe I was just rationalizing a trap I'd walked into willingly. I didn't know. But when dawn finally broke over the moors, pale and gray and unforgiving, I knew what I had to do. Monday morning arrived with cold certainty. I dressed with more care than usual, smoothing every wrinkle from my blouse, making sure my tights had no runs, fastening the cardigan with deliberate precision. I used the concealer, the lip balm Amara had given me, the eyeliner I'd secretly purchased from the village pharmacy over the weekend. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I almost recognized. This is survival, I told myself. Nothing more. But the lie felt thinner every time I repeated it. Dr. Harcourt's office was located in the oldest part of the institute, a tower that jutted from the main building like a stone finger pointing accusingly at heaven. The stairs spiraled upward in dizzying circles, lit by narrow windows that cast bars of light across worn stone steps. By the time I reached his door, my heart was hammering. I knocked. "Come in, Ms. Cross." The office was exactly what I'd expected, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with leather-bound volumes, a massive oak desk cluttered with papers, and a fireplace where flames crackled softly. But what I hadn't expected was the wall behind his desk. It was covered in photographs. Old photographs, some dating back to the 19th century by the look of them. Students in various uniforms posed stiffly for the camera. But as I looked closer, I noticed something strange. In several of the photographs, faces had been circled in red ink. And beneath each circle, a handwritten note, confirmed. 1847, confirmed. 1923, confirmed. 1956. Dr. Harcourt followed my gaze and smiled. "I see you've noticed the gallery," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "A rather unusual collection, isn't it?" I lowered myself into the chair across from his desk, unable to look away from the wall. "What do those notes mean?" "Confirmation," he said simply. "That Ashford's archives contain more than just medieval manuscripts." He stood and walked to the wall, his hands clasped behind his back. Ashford Institute was founded in 1472 by a group of Benedictine monks who believed that knowledge, true knowledge, could only be preserved through transformation. They weren't just copying texts. They were seeking individuals who embodied transformation itself. I stared at him. "I don't understand." "Don't you?" He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Ms. Cross, have you heard of the alchemical concept of solviti coagula? To dissolve and coagulate. To break down what exists and rebuild it into something new." "That's metaphorical," I said weakly. "Is it?" He moved to his desk and pulled out a leather-bound ledger so old the cover was cracked. "These are the Institute's private records. Dating back to our founding. Every student who has ever attended Ashford is documented here, including certain special admissions." He opened the ledger and turned it toward me. The page was covered in handwritten entries, each one noting a name, a date, and a curious annotation. Thomas Whitmore, admitted 1847 as Thomasina. Completed program 1850. Confirmed. Samuel Blackwood, admitted 1923 as Samantha. Withdrew 1924. Michael Ashford, admitted 1956 as Michelle. Completed program 1959. Confirmed. Later became professor. My breath caught. "You see," Dr. Harcourt said quietly, "you are not the first student to arrive at Ashford under altered circumstances. In fact, the Institute has a long tradition of accepting individuals who exist between categories. Some were admitted by mistake, like yourself. Others came seeking refuge. A few even applied deliberately, knowing what Ashford truly was. And what is it? I whispered. He closed the ledger carefully. A place where transformation is not just studied, it is lived. Where the boundaries between identity, scholarship, and selfhood blur until they become indistinguishable. I shook my head, trying to process what he was saying. But why? Why would the Institute do this? Because the monks who founded Ashford understood something that modern society has forgotten, that the most profound truths are found not in certainty, but in liminality. In the space between. In the moment of dissolution before coagulation. He leaned forward. They believed that individuals who experienced transformation, particularly gender transformation, possessed a unique capacity for understanding the deepest mysteries of existence. That's insane, I breathed. Is it? He raised an eyebrow. You've been here 2 weeks, Ms. Cross. In that time, you've produced some of the most insightful analysis Professor Ashvin has seen in years. Your work on the damaged Psalter was remarkable. Your essay on the symbolism of marginalia in Gothic manuscripts received the highest marks in your cohort. He paused. Would you have accomplished that as Eliot, the invisible boy hiding behind books? Or did you need to become Eliot, the woman who finally learned to take up space? The question hit like a physical blow. Because I knew the answer. So what are you asking me? I said, my voice shaking. To stay here as some kind of experiment? I'm asking you to stay here as yourself, he corrected. Whoever that turns out to be. The Institute will support you, financially, academically, socially. All we ask in return is that you commit fully to the program. No half measures. No hiding. If you choose to continue as Ms. Cross, then you will be Ms. Cross in every aspect of your life here. And if I can't? I whispered. If I try and it's too much? His expression softened, the first time I'd seen genuine compassion in his face. Then you leave with our blessing and a glowing recommendation letter, he said. No expulsion. No mark on your record. We will simply say that Ashford was not the right fit. I stared at him, my mind reeling. But I suspect, he continued, that you won't leave. Because despite your fear, despite your confusion, part of you has already made the choice. You've felt it, haven't you? The way the world responds differently to Eliot as woman than it ever did to Eliot as man. The way you've begun to inhabit your own mind with more clarity, more purpose. I wanted to deny it. But I couldn't. Because he was right. I need time, I said finally. Of course. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. Take the week. Explore the archives, you'll find them illuminating. And when you're ready, come find me. I stood on shaking legs and turned toward the door. Ms. Cross? I looked back. The Institute has been waiting centuries for students like you, he said quietly. Don't underestimate what you might discover here. About manuscripts, yes. But also about the text of your own life.